Dear ladies and gentlemen, this is 140th day of the invasion and the Russian-Ukrainian war uh, in Ukraine. My name is Andriy Shevchenko. I'm the head of the Media Center Ukraine. I'm grateful to all the journalists who inform about the events in Ukraine. We shall have a talk with Olena Korobkova, who is the head of the board of the International Association of the Banks of Ukraine. So, what is the current state of the Ukrainian banking system on the 140th day of invasion? It's really true that the full scale war of Russia against Ukraine has serious consequences for Ukraine and for every one of us. We are objective and we do understand that as a result of this war, particularly after the full scale invasion, the GDP will drop up to 40% and the inflation is many times higher than the planned level. The banking system is demonstrating phenomenal resistance. We are trying to face the challenge. All the banks are operating non-stop. The liquidity is okay. And if we have a look at the way the banking system was operating before, then mm, we there were some just banking holidays announced and the banks didn't work, but our banking system is a good precedent for all the world. And it was possible owing to two factors. First of all, this is a big work that has been done since 2015, the reforms that have been implemented. And the second factor is the good response on the part of the National Bank and all the other banks on the day of invasion. During the 5 months of work, only three banks were withdrawn. Some of them were the branches of the Russian banks, and one bank actually had serious problems even before the war. Since February, we have been working nonstop, particularly in all the regions, and particularly in those regions which are safe both for the employees and for the clients. In the regions which are in combat area, not all the branches have been operating. In the middle of June, owing to deoccupation of the northern regions, now we have 75% branches that are working properly. We managed to face the challenge of multiple cyber attacks, which are still going on. Um, in order to ensure protection of data, the banks, owing to the efforts of the Supreme Council of Ukraine, managed to transform the data into clouds, and we are trying to maintain stable operation. Definitely, there will be some risks for our operations, and this risk will be definitely serious. Now we are talking about not the profits, but about systemic support to each other. So you're talking about the resistance of the banking system. Has it been something unexpected for the bankers themselves? Well, we have been prepared by COVID. Whatever could be done remotely, I'm talking right now about, for example, remote identification and many other things have been done. So we have actually managed to do a lot during COVID period. The banking system managed to do it for several months during the COVID time and managed to complete it, I mean, digitalization during the first months of war. And for example, in order to uh, retain our employees and in order to retain our clients, we did everything possible to provide remote services and the whole spectrum of the banking services. Let's once again clarify what have you managed to do? You have mentioned digitalization, you have managed remote operation, and we also see that a number of banks were trying to um, please declines, they cancelled some fees, etc. What else would you like to mention that became the factors that ensured the resistance of the system? Well, first of all, this is well-coordinated work and operation of all the stakeholders. I'm talking about the banks and the National Bank of Ukraine, also the presidential office as well as the MPs. For example, the international systems, Visa and MasterCard, uh, did zero interchange, and it made it possible for the banks not to pay additional fees. Now everything is trying to come back as it was before. Definitely the fees will be brought back, but they won't be probably the same as they were before. There were some credit privileges or holidays. That was good. But now there are clients who, for example, state how we can pay off our debts or how we can relocate our debts, for example, to the western regions because we cannot pay them in southern regions of Ukraine. We try to assist our clients. Together with the government, we launched special program for agrarians, um, and there were some state guarantees for the program. It was very positive step. Now there are some issues for our clients from the agrarian sector. Particularly, we are talking about logistic issues, and this is definitely a big problem. And there are lots of attempts to unblock the ports because out of 11, only one is operating. Yesterday or the day before yesterday, it seems to me two ships managed to leave the ports, and we do hope there will be a systemic solution to the problem and will be able to solve this logistic issue. Miss Olena, what are the forecasts the International Bank Association is trying to take into account? You have mentioned about the GDP forecast, about the inflation. Could you give us more statistics? Definitely. If we are talking about the total volume of losses, are now it is estimated at approximately 6.6 billion, but the amount may be even higher because we do not know how long the war will be going on. If we are talking about the percentage income of the banks, it was on the rise and there was some slowdown, 25% in January and 18% in March. But globally, inflation is not only the Ukrainian challenge, this is the worldwide challenge. And Ukraine definitely feels it particularly. And in June, for example, consumer inflation has been on the rise and it is more than 20%. In May, it was 18%. The prices went up 3.1%. Definitely at the beginning of full-scale war, the decision of monetizing the deficit of the state budget to fund critical needs was a non-alternative decision because we couldn't understand how the circumstances will be. But now we should find probably another solution. We now cannot operate in the same way. And if we are talking about the state bonds, uh, we should try to prevent devaluation of our currency, and the uh, bonds should meet the current conditions. Talking about the inflation rate, definitely the international assistance, I'm talking about $4 billion dollars a month. Uh, some part of this money may be given to the market in order to keep the inflation rate on the current level, trying to prevent it overcoming the rate of 40. And we are talking about also IDPs because we understand that according to different estimates, there are about 5 or 10 million people who left Ukraine. And generally, these are women and children as well as elderly people. Lots of people, I mean, the husbands actually protect our country right now. These are the current indicators we have to address, we have to be attentive to, and we have to find solution for. And definitely, we have to do a lot in order to address these issues. You have mentioned three banks which stopped their operation after the 24th of February. There were two Russian related banks and one problematic Ukrainian bank. So, what is your forecast? Whether all the Ukrainian banks will be able to survive after the war? Actually, the National Bank of Ukraine actually, at the initiative of the National Bank of Ukraine, the parliament has taken a decision that if there are some violations of rules, the banks will be still on the market. But we do understand that violation of the rules will take place, and they may be even quite significant. Well, this is the two-way road. If the owners of the banks would like to leave the market, there is a mechanism to do this. But every owner of the bank should clearly understand what kind of business model he or she has. Now, we are not talking about any profits for the banking system. We are talking about assisting each other because behind the banks are lots of people. On average, we are talking about 150,000 employees, and all these employees have their families whom they have to provide for. Just to say that now there are some preconditions for some other banks to leave the market. Now there are no such preconditions. But to state that all the banks will be able to survive is also not possible. Or now it is 140th day of war. Nobody knows how long the war will continue, how much resources we have, how resistant the clients are. So these things are very difficult to estimate. When you were talking about 6.6 billion, are you talking about the losses, economic losses? No, this is the total amount of losses from the events of operational risks, particularly in the banking system. I'm talking about the war-related risks. We are talking about 6.6 billion hryvnias, but if we are talking about the losses from the Russian aggression, it's more than $100 billion because we are talking about roads and infrastructures. But the banking sector, 50% is owned by the state. So it is very important to renew the infrastructure facilities. We have a number of programs how to assist with logistic issues, but we understand there should be some funding with good interest rate. I'm talking about the interest rate, including $250 billion of private investments. What about these plans? Do they seem realistic for you? Well, I will probably quote our president, who said, restoration of Ukraine is not something that will take place after the war. This is something we have to be engaged in now. And in order to do it and in order to be able to invest this amount of money after the war, after our victory, we have to do lots of homework right now, just today and tomorrow. And that means we have to think about private investments, and lots of countries demonstrate and show support to Ukraine. And all these ways of supporting Ukraine makes our victory closer. But at the same time, we should do lots of things which are should be done right now and which are very important for our country? And the final question, when your relatives or your friends ask you privately what should be done now, what kind of currency you should have, probably you should make any deposits or vice versa, you should take out uh, your money, withdraw your money from the deposits. Thank you for the question. I do hope that the rate for military bonds and state bonds will be higher in the nearest future, because we see that the military personnel has quite large salaries and they definitely have this money, and they convert this money into dollars in order to somehow have their income safe. If we take a look at the deposits, then the trend starting from the beginning of the war uh, has grown up like 22%. I'm talking about the deposits up to 200,000 hryvnias, and those which were over 200,000 hryvnias have grown up to 11%. And we did everything possible to give 100% guarantee to all the deposits. And this initiative of the president was very beneficial both for the banks and for the clients. Some parts of the deposits, actually, the part of the deposits in all the currencies have been up to 65%. It means that all the clients trust the banking sector and the banking system. But if we are talking about the military bonds, and if we make the rate the commercial one, or for example, if the rate is 25 and still we offer 11, it doesn't work like that. If it will be 21, 23, then people will invest their money into them because it will be higher than the inflation. And the interest rate they will have will be compensating their investments. So we do hope if we have military bonds and the rate, the real interest rate will be good, I will definitely recommend investing into military bonds, because the patriotism, the support we witnessed at the beginning of the war, when everybody was trying to invest into military bonds, irrespective of the interest rate, is just changing the trend. So we already did not witness the same level of patriotism. People understand that they have somehow to protect their savings and their money. And military bonds actually is a very good tool. And by using this tool, the state will be able to engage to attract lots of money. According to different estimates, our citizens actually had more than $40 billion. And we have this money in Ukraine. We have to do everything possible to bring this money back into the banking system, for the banking system to be able to provide loans to citizens and to make our victory closer. And we have really to show all the world that Ukraine and the Ukrainians are the best. Probably I will assume that it's not like the patriotism is going down, but probably the people's savings are going down. Thank you very much, Olena Korobkova, the chair of the board of the International Association of Banks of Ukraine.